Hey, Zane Griggs here. So today I'm going to attempt to explain HDL and LDL cholesterol and why following a low carb, which conversely would mean a higher fat diet or a ketogenic, even if you go on a ketogenic diet, that's going to be a higher fat diet, does not increase your risk for heart disease. Okay, so taking in more the right fat and even cholesterol, necessary nutrient, does not raise your risk of heart disease at all. Okay, so but we've been sort of misinformed. I'd say misinformed is a good way of saying, a nice way of saying it, about what HDL and LDL cholesterol means. And so I'm going to unpack that for you today and then explain what we can do to make sure that we are eating the right types of fats and the right way to not increase heart disease and not worry about these mysterious numbers so much that just create a lot of confusion. So, LDL, HDL cholesterol. So what happens when you eat food? Okay, there's fat in it. There's fat in most foods. Okay, so meats, oils. So you got butter. All these good fats. They're good for us. We need it. We use it for energy. We use it for making hormones, testosterone, estrogen, all our basically all of our hormones to coat our nervous system, feed our brain. Brain is primarily fat, so we need fat to replace those cells and to create neurons, replace neurons, create new brain cells. So many functions, create hormone, like I said, vitamin D. So when we eat fat, it is in our system, in our digestive system. In order to get to the rest of our body, to the tissues we need to get it to, we wrap it. Our body wraps it in a protein, like for a carrier, to protect it, to keep it so we don't have just fat globules floating around in our bloodstream, which we don't want. We want to get where we want to go, right? So we have this fat, this fat globule, so wrapped in a protein. And that protein, there's different types of protein, but they're lipoproteins. We have different types of high density lipoproteins, HDL, low density lipoproteins. There's IDLs, there's VLDLs, very low density lipoprotein. So there's different types of lipoproteins that carry these fat, and not just fat, but triglycerides, okay, which is a fat molecule, but also fat-soluble nutrients that we absolutely need and that we only absorb through fat or with fat. Things like vitamin A, vitamin D, K, E, CoQ10, obviously a great heart supplement that was made a mistake, but you got to have fat to absorb it. It's fat-soluble, okay? So that means we need fat when we digest it, when we process it and deliver it to our tissues, to make use of it, for it to be bioavailable, and along with a number of other minerals like calcium, magnesium. Those are all fat-soluble minerals. We need fat to process them. We need fat to absorb them. That's how our body uses it. So fat's been made a bad guy, and it's completely necessary. So back to the process, we wrap it in a protein, and generally, the tissues, like say you want it in your brain, okay? So there's a brain, the brain cell that needs this fat, or maybe the muscle cell that needs the fat, or nerve cell sends out a signal and says, I need this kind of fat here. I need some fat up here. I need this fat and some minerals here. So it sends out a signal. It's like Uber. It's like sending for an Uber. Okay, so it says, I need it, and I need it here. And so what happens, a signal goes out, and it goes and it attaches itself to, it goes down where we release the fat, okay, through our digestive system. It's released in the protein, attaches itself to that fat. Now the problem is that it can't tell good fats from bad fats, unfortunately. But it does grab onto that fat, and it helps it transport or label it and send it. So it's labeled, so that lipoprotein, that protein wrapped around the fat, is labeled as fat. Okay, it's got a cellular level label on it. And this signal goes out and grabs that, and it takes it, so it kind of hooks onto that cell. When it comes back, that certain kind of cell will recognize it and bring it in and absorb it, okay? So that's how it delivers those nutrients where they need to be. And it's this great signal, like I said, to Uber, and then goes, but someone else, another cell on the way could grab it, but then eventually everybody gets what they need. The problem arises when those labels get damaged. So let me finish the process. So I get distracted. I want to jump ahead. So it's wrapped in a protein. It goes to the cells it needs to go to. And when it's delivered all the fat, these lipoproteins become very high density because the amount of fluffy fat that's delivered, it shrinks down, it gets smaller as it's delivered the fat, so it becomes very high density. Either that or the whole lipoprotein gets absorbed through the blood vessel and into the cell completely, depending on how much it needs. If it needs a lot of it, it just absorbs the whole thing and goes into your tissues directly. If it just needs a little, it drops off a little, keeps going until it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and then it recycles back to as a high-density lipoprotein, HDL. Okay, it's high density because it's been shrunk. Goes back to the liver where it's recycled. Any bad fats with it that it can find, it sends out through your system, liver, bile, sends it out, gets out of your system. Takes the good ones, recycles them, and puts them back out there as VLDLs, very low density lipoprotein, and sends them back out in a new lipoprotein from the liver to be delivering more fat again. So it's this great delivery system of energy and nutrients, vital nutrients we need. Okay, so what happens is those HDLs come back to the liver, and that's a good sign. We want those high HDL levels coming back because that means things are moving correctly. So you've heard about have your HDL high. Okay, it's because everything's working, and the lipoproteins are making their cycle through your body, delivering the nutrients, delivering the fat where it needs to go, and then coming back to the liver to be reused and recycled again. That's good. Here's what happens. We eat things sometimes that damage either the labeling of that lipoprotein or actually bad fats inside them. So there could be an oxidized fat or a very inflammatory free radical creating inflamed fat like from polyunsaturated oils like vegetable oils. Or they get oxidized through glycation, which is from high sugar. They can get oxidized in the bloodstream itself when you have high blood sugar. Okay, so you have a lot of carbs in your diet, high blood sugar, you have blood sugar issues. You're going to have damage to these lipoproteins. It's going to damage the labeling. So it has a hard time getting where it needs to go. And if it can't deliver them, then it just keeps swimming around and around in your bloodstream, lost, not knowing, like an Uber driver with nowhere to go, okay? Eventually he's going to run out of gas, right? Well, that's what happens to your lipoproteins. Eventually, that breaks down, and the damage created by the oxidized fat or by the glycation, the sugar, glycating, we create AGEs, advanced glycation endpoints, spells age, right? So it breaks down that lipoprotein, and then your fat, the fat and the nutrients that was in there just gets dumped in your bloodstream. It gets dumped against the cell wall, and if it's glycated, it just sticks to it. And that's not good, because you don't want these globules of fat running around your bloodstream. That creates high triglycerides, blood triglycerides. Okay, so if you have high blood triglycerides coming back on test, that's why. This is not what clogs your arteries, but it does cause damage to those arterial cells, or the cells in your artery, in the inside of your artery. And then you get plaque builds up, and when those plaques break free, that's when you get the clots, okay? So that's really what really causes the clots, causes the atherosclerosis, is the breakdown of these lipoproteins from the bad fats, okay, not saturated fats. They're actually unsaturated fats. They're polyunsaturated fats from vegetable oils that are easily oxidized. They're trans fats. Any of those cooking oils, when they process them, if you're eating them in the almond, you're eating them in the seed, if you're eating them in the nut, great. It's already in the nut. When they extract them, you're automatically creating trans fats. When you cook with them, when things are fried in a restaurant, and those polyunsaturated oils, these soybean oils, canola oils, corn oils, they're fried, that creates more trans fats, creates more oxidation, more free radicals that cause damage, okay? And trans fats, which we all know, everyone agrees, both sides of whatever side you're on, low fat, high fat, everyone agrees trans fats are bad, okay? It's margarine, Crisco, and the thing, you can't, the very best polyunsaturated oil that you buy, cooking oil you buy in the store, the highest grade organic, you name it, is at least 5% trans fats, but just because of the processing. Most of them are more. And when you get it in the restaurant, if they've been cooking that oil for a week, because they're allowed to cook it use that same oil for at least a week in restaurants, many of them push it to 2. The more they cook it, the more oxidized it gets, the more trans fats you have in there, and the more free radicals you have in there, which of course cause damage and cancer and all those wonderful things. So it's really, we've got it backwards, folks, because we're trying to eat these oils that are supposed to be good for us to eliminate the saturated fats, and saturated fats are actually one's very stable. They don't oxidize, molecularly structured to not take on more oxygen, so they don't oxidize, and they're very stable. It's these polyunsaturated oils that cause the damage. It's the sugar, because we're avoiding fat, we got to eat lots more carbs, right? It's the sugar, the glucose, the fructose, causing the glycation and damaging the lipoproteins, which causes us they get lost, then they break down, drop the fats in our system, create more oxidation of the arterial cells, okay, the cells in the artery, and that's where the problems are. We get oxidation and inflammation in the arteries. So what can we do about it? Well, I'll tell you, the LDL, HDL thing has been very confusing. I'll tell you, the craziness over LDL is completely, there's no reason for it. It's unfounded. High LDL delivers fat to your brain, delivers fat and nutrients all over your body. You need it. When doctors go to an online risk assessment for heart disease, the question for LDL, the LDL number for that patient is not even there. Doesn't even ask for LDL. Asks for HDL, might ask for triglycerides. Doesn't even ask for LDL. You know why? It's not really a factor. So why do we make a big deal about it? Because we have a drug that helps lower it. Unfortunately, we don't have a drug that raises HDL, so we don't really talk about that as much. But we talk about LDL because it's scary and we got a drug that can help lower it, so we can sell you a drug. If your LDL, for example, is 150, okay, and say your risk factor for heart disease is at 20%, if you lower that LDL down to, say, 70, which is insane, it's almost impossible and it's not healthy, you lower your risk factor from 20% have a heart attack to maybe 15%. So it's a 5% change, not a big change. No, it's not really 5%, it's a bigger change than that, but it goes from 20% to 15%. Not a big change, right? But you've lowered it to a very unhealthy level. If your LDL is down around 70, your total cholesterol is much lower. You have a very low cholesterol level. You're at higher risk for cancer, hemorrhaging stroke where you bleed out, okay, in the brain, anxiety, depression, infections, because we need those nutrients. We need that cholesterol to rebuild tissues and build hormones and nerve cells. However, if you raise your HDL, let's say you're at a 20% risk of heart disease, and you raise your HDL up to 60, you have just reduced your risk for heart disease to 2%, from 20% to 2%. That's a whole lot better than 20% to 15%, isn't it? 20% to 2% just by raising your HDL to 60. Okay, many of you are probably right around in the 40s, 50s anyway. You might be at 60, but you're not far from 60. But unfortunately, like I said, there's no drugs to do this. So what do we do to increase HDL and have healthier fats running through our system? Well, exercise obviously helps HDL. We've all been told that. So exercise is a good thing. But really what we put in our bodies is where we should start. We need to start by reducing sugar and simple carbs like breads, pastas, rice, potatoes, reducing those things. Even fruit, don't eat a lot of fruit in the day, a piece of fruit here and there if you're dealing with high blood sugar, insulin resistance. Yeah, fruit's not your friend. Okay? So fructose, glucose, reduce those. Eat more veggies because they're low in sugar, lots of nutrients, lots of fiber, lots of good fiber, not the grain fiber, but plant fiber, and eat better fats. Avoid the oils that are polyunsaturated fats. So check your salad dressing. Look for the soybean oils, the corn oils, canola oils, safflower oils, all these polyunsaturated, high omega-6 carrying fats. They're very inflammatory that become rancid and free radicals and trans fats in them very quickly, very easily. And go over more stable fats. Coconut oil is good. Plant-based saturated fat or stable fat. Butter, preferably organic or grass-fed butter. The fat in meat is a natural occurring fat. Most of it's saturated and stable. Fish, of course, always a good one with omega-3s. But go with those more stable fats. Avoid the polyunsaturated fats that tend to oxidize. And you'll see a change, okay, just making those dietary changes, you'll see a change in your HDL going up for sure. Because, as I'll repeat in the cycle, it's those polyunsaturated oils and the sugars that cause the breakdown of the lipoprotein, which keeps them from returning. And if they're not returning, if those HDLs aren't returning to the liver, okay, then you have low HDL. When you have them making their deliveries where they're supposed to go because they're undamaged and the labels are intact and they go where they're supposed to go, then your HDLs are high because they're running through their circuit, they're making their deliveries, they're returning to the liver, they're coming back, and they're cycling correctly. So when we eat right, when we eat the good fats and avoid these inflammatory fats, the HDL is high because it can finish its cycle, make its delivery, and return back to where it's supposed to go. So, if you have any questions, I'm sure that's a lot of information, very sciencey, long one today, but it's just such a confusing topic for so many people, and I just wanted to get it out there, get it on video. So, but feel free to ask questions. I'll do my best to answer them as clearly as possible. And if you know someone that could benefit from hearing this, please tag them in the comments below. I'm happy to answer the questions too. Talk to you later.